Work my ass off. Listen, where the nanny at?
Man.
But as soon as he started walking, I told him, I said, enjoy it. Because as soon as he get to walking and talking, he with the crew, with the guys. I did the same thing with Trey. She probably got a...
Hey guys, welcome to Little Blackbird 91. I thought I'd give you guys a special live. You guys didn't ask me about the Nelly and Ashanti situation, so I'm going to break down episode 2. And I know this was one of the biggest talking points on the show, where Nelly said basically that Ashanti can look after the baby from, you know, very young until the child begins to walk and talk. And I want to give it a perspective to you, an attachment perspective, because what I heard Nelly say really and truly was fear. And a lot of people feel like he's being selfish, and I agree. A lot of people feel like he's being a disservice. I agree. But a lot of what he's talking about is an attachment issue. And there are men like this and there are women like this, right? But a lot of what he discussed was an attachment issue, because what he really said was, I don't know how to behave with the child between 0 and when they're not able to state that their needs are. I'm not sure of my own maternal instincts as a father, how to handle when the child is not able to communicate and express what they actually need. And it makes me feel uncomfortable when I have to try and work out what that particular maternal instinct is in regards to the child's needs. And the reason why he's struggling in that space is because he probably never had that. He probably never had his needs met as a very young individual. Now, I did a part 1 of this video and I spoke about how he actually addressed us and made it very clear that in his childhood, his mother, left him with other people, and the fact that he never had a stable home. Now, this creates this environment where your needs seemingly go on a back burner and survival is the main thing. Your emotions are not important. So you grow up in a household where your emotions are neglected and pushed aside. You don't believe your emotions and your needs are that valuable, even though you still need your needs and emotions to be validated. And so then we come to this point where he says in front of the guys, hey, look, I told Ashanti, do what you got to do. And then when he's able to walk and talk, you know, he's with the guys. And I'm like, you're missing the point here. You're not understanding what's happening here, Nelly, because Nelly doesn't recognize that the impact of a child's development actually is between the ages of before they're walking and talking. That bonding stage is very much important. And so what he's failing to understand is the emotional impact that his presence or lack of presence is going to create and foster. Whilst he may be there for Ashanti, whilst he may be supportive of her and her dreams and her goals and all that kind of stuff, because he really was supportive about those things. That's what he said, right? But he's always on the road a lot. And then he's also adding to the fact that he doesn't want to be bothered necessarily with the child at that point until he gets older. He's actually really saying that child, you're only going to get my love conditionally. You're not going to get my love unconditionally, because I'm only loving you when you are actually able to walk and talk. That's the only time I'm going to love you. And it presents a conditional type of love for that child, even though I understand what he's saying. I get it. I understand it. But it's a fearful perspective. So we're going to break it all the way down in this particular video, break down episode 2. But I'm going to focus mainly on Nelly and his avoidant perspective, and hopefully give you a bit more understanding of what's happening to you as well. Because many people are watching Nelly and Ashanti, and I'm sure you can actually identify with some of the things that have happened as well. Is something that we can start to help you through as well. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you guys like, you share, you subscribe, you click on that bell button for notifications of the uploads. Okay, all right. And let's get into this video. So I said I wanted to analyze this video from an attachment perspective. Okay, and so what attachment styles are is the way that we emotionally bond in relationships. We see how Nelly is bonding with Ashanti, right? And we see how Nelly wants to bond with a kid. He's keeping his distance. That was what we call emotional bond, how we bond in those relationships. And what that was developed by is John Bowlby, who's a British psychologist, and Mary Ainsworth did some more work about that as well. And what they developed was what we call 4 attachment styles. We have secure, we have anxious, we have fearful avoidant, and dismissive avoidant. Okay, the avoidants have 2 because later on Mary Ainsworth designated the fearful avoidant as disorganized or dysfunctional attachment. Okay, now really quickly what they are. Secure people grew up in households where they were loved, cared for who they were, not for what they did. They were loved for who they were, and they were able to speak and be able to express their needs and be able to have their needs met emotionally, physically, mentally, financially as young children. They were safe in their environment. And then other people grew up in households where their parents were conditional in their love. For instance, if you're an anxious person, oftentimes, and you anxiously attach in relationships, right? What tends to happen is you grew up in a household where it was conditionally loved. You were loved when you were performing. You loved when you were running. You were loved when you had grades. You were loved when you did chores, but you weren't loved necessarily for who you were, or at least that's how you interpreted the information from your parents and how they treated you and your emotional needs. Okay. And then we have the other two, which is avoidance. Avoidance grew up in households where there is some level of abuse, but it can be abuse in the sense of neglect, right? And neglect can be physical, emotional, and it can be also intentional or unintentional. Like emotional neglect doesn't always mean intentionality. Parents can be unintentionally neglectful because they themselves are not emotionally connected themselves and struggle to give you what they never had, right? So that's why we get dismissive and fearful avoidant. Dismissive avoidant households are people grew up in a particular place where their parents were emotionally neglectful. They weren't able to fulfill the child's emotional needs, or they were mocked, shamed, embarrassed, punished for having emotions and expressing them. And so therefore what the dismissive avoidant person learned was it's not safe enough to me to share my emotions. Let's push that to the side and dismiss those particular feelings. Then we have fearful avoidance. Fearful avoidance grew up in households where there was both inconsistency and neglect, and usually there's some form of abuse, whether it's physical, mental, sexual, financial, some level of abuse, like narcissistic parents, or even alcoholic parents, or the easiest one, I guess, to say is a parent who is almost bipolar in the way they move, right? They're one day hot, one day cold, or one day loving, one day angry and dismissive and this. And so the inconsistency and the unpredictability of that particular environment and the chaoticness of that environment births what we call fearful avoidant individual people, right? So those childhoods and those homes create how people are going to move in emotional bonds with people. So fearful avoidance, they particularly fear abandonment, rejection, and betrayal. People that grew up in dismissive households fear rejection. And those who grew up in anxious households, they fear abandonment. Now, this is all important because I believe that Nelly is exhibiting avoidant traits. I'm not going to say he's dismissive or fearful just yet, but I will say he's definitely exhibiting those avoidant traits. For a man to say that, you know what, I will deal with a kid when they're able to speak and able to walk, and that's when I'm going to take over, he's failing to recognize the emotional deposits that's needed for that young child in its development. Okay. And the reason why he doesn't recognize that is because he himself also dismisses his own needs. Okay. Right. So that's really important as well. Now, again, I think also for Nelly to understand that by him not necessarily wanting to, I'm not going to say he's not being there, but necessarily in a way of him not wanting to apply his emotional energy and strength to the situation, he also doesn't realize he's taking away from that child a core development aspect. Okay, right? So yes, his son may love him right now, but what you'll realize is that son will have issues. Because why? Because actually he's created a conditional environment. So what you may realize is the son may be great with him because he's performing with him. How does the son relate to him emotionally? Right? How is the son going to relate to him emotionally? How's the son going to be able to understand how to deal with his own emotions? Right? Are they going to feel safe enough to do those things? Are they going to mask their emotional needs by being a great performer? You see, because Nelly can get away with anything he wants because he's a great performer. And many people in life do this. They're great at their job, their career. They're great at something. And so actually it covers up the cracks of you not being a great relational individual person. Now, we already know that Nelly's missed many milestones. In fact, he talked about it on the episode. He said about how he's missed so many milestones because he's been away. He unfortunately couldn't be there because, because of his work and what he was doing, what he's been doing as a career path, which has obviously been him an entertainer, which is understandable in some respect. But you've missed most of the early milestones of your children. At some point, money can't buy those things. At some point, we have to put the money down. At some point, we have to be like, you know what? Is money really worth it? I'm not saying don't continue the lifestyle. I'm saying to you that there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance. There has to be a balance. There has to be a balance.
Plan to live with you a couple of
What you mean?
Just go somewhere and just be like, I gotta be somewhere.
She not leaving them for nobody. She barely let me hold them.
But she gonna slide out of there.
So obviously he lets us know that, you know, Ashanti also, and it's really interesting as well watching Ashanti, because the way that Ashanti moves with a child is like, I guess, like most mothers, right? But she's very much like, at one point Ashanti was at a show and she had to leave she wanted to leave the show early to get back to her child. And I recognize that, you know, that mother wanted to be a mother, but I also recognize a lot of that anxiety too, that anxiousness, like that's a massive thing, right? And so actually this is where co-regulation can really happen between Nelly and Ashanti, and where he may be doing himself a little bit of a disservice here, right? And the reason why I say disservice is because if Ashanti is for what I'm looking at, and the level of anxiety that Ashanti has with the child, in terms of like, she has separation anxiety, doesn't want a child to, she has got performance and she wants to get back straight away, you know, and, you know, wanting to breastfeed every time and be there. And it's like that level of anxiety. And of course it's a newborn, so it's not like it's, she can just leave anyway, right? But that level of anxiety needs to be balanced. So if Nelly has the ability to be calm and collected, that's why that's why his emotional presence is as a necessity. That's why him being around is actually really important, because it balances, right? It's supposed to bring that balance and equilibrium for the child to be able to exist in a perfect balance. So without that, you leave her alone to be the anxious one. And that when you've got that much anxiety, even with a nanny, it's the emotional capacity. It's not the physical help. The physical help is important. It helps alleviate some of the stress. But actually, there is also what we call emotional loadage or emotional baggage. And that also can't be just unloaded with a nanny. And that's where sometimes men don't realize, and I'm not saying just men, but just people in general don't realize. But let me say about this one, in this instance, Nelly may not realize that how his presence is so important. Now, something that he did really well, I want to praise him, because he's not everything that he was doing badly. And this is what proved my point about the role that he can actually play. It's the way he said this to Ashanti. And this is something that I have to give him credit for, because this tells me about, you know, him caring about her and showing this, right? So it's not all bad. I want to make it very clear. It's not all bad, but just listen to this part.
Not wanting to leave him, my career has kind of taken a little bit of a back seat. Nothing is worth, God forbid, we get on a plane and die. I don't want that to happen.
Well, no.
You know what I'm saying?
Nobody wants that to happen. And I definitely don't think that that's going to happen. But even though you sign the paperwork, whatever comes from it, if you don't want to go, we'll deal with that shit.
Now, of course, I don't want my thing to go. But interesting enough, here in that moment, right, she's starting to have a little bit of an anxiety spiral. She's like, oh my God, I'm having nervous feelings. I feel like the plane might, you know, I don't know if I want to get on that plane. You know, I don't want to leave our son. Like, she's having what we call an anxious spiral. She's spiraling. And what Nelly does really, really well here is that he tells her, listen, it doesn't matter what's going to go on. Listen, I've got your back. You know what? If they're going to cancel that contract, if they sue you, we'll do it. We're in this together. That is why I'm saying that he can do it. In that immediate moment, he showed us that he can do it. In that immediate moment, he shows us that he can perform emotionally and support Ashanti, right? Because in that moment where she was spiraling, his words were very simple and very clear, and he showed us that he was willing to back his partner up. And it's not like, he didn't say, just stop complaining, don't worry about it. He said, listen, don't worry about it. Listen, if the thing happens, we got it together. You know what I mean? So in that immediate moment, right? In that immediate moment, he has calmed the storm. That's what I mean by him being an avoidant, not recognizing certain arenas. In this area, he recognizes the support. But I think when it comes to children, there's something that's off for him as well. Of course, him being a child and maybe not getting the emotional needs met as well, but not recognizing that he recognized in this moment how to support her, which is wonderful. We want to see that more. We want to see more of those things. And in the whole episode, in fact, the whole episode, again, you hear him complimenting her. You hear him talking about her, saying how, you know, at one point where she's like feeling like she's overweight, and, you know, again, he appreciates her and says, hey, look, I'm not expecting you to spring back. You know, like I even like you how you are now. You know, he said, listen, don't even lose that weight. You know, I like it. So he understands the emotional aspect. Okay.
Operational. I just say, I don't think nobody's expecting a magic wand around there. I understand that who we are sometimes could be added pressure to her in the sense of her getting back in the gym and then the baby weight and all of that. But you're the baddest thing on the planet to me, regardless. Especially with them thighs and things like.
Now, clearly, he gives her a level of encouragement here and lets her know it's a safe environment. He lets her know, listen, I've got you. It doesn't matter if you feel like you're overweight or whatever. Baby, you look good to me, right? And that's all that matters. This, again, is a wonderful exposition of how he's supporting her emotionally, which means, again, he's understanding the complexity and the difficulty of doing this, but he also understands the weight of his words. He recognizes his support here can actually help Ashanti. I think he misses a critical trick, a critical trick of noticing how actually his emotional presence with the baby and Ashanti is actually very helpful. I'm not saying he should stop work. I'm not saying he shouldn't go on tour. I'm not saying he should go on the road. He should do, because he's at the end of the day, he's a man, and nobody likes a broke man. Let's be honest. I don't care what no one says. No one likes a broke man. He's got to go to work. All I'm saying to you is the mindset of I don't want, I'm not going to do anything until the kid is grown sounds wonderful, until it gets to a certain point where you recognize that you actually have to be present and a part of the child's development. Okay, you got to be a part of the child's development. Now, I wonder if there was a conversation between Nelly and thank you, Ella. I was going to literally say that. I was wondering if there was a conversation between him and Ashanti, and if that is the case, this is where both of them have to be accountable. This is where both of them have to be accountable, because if Nelly told you from the beginning, if Nelly told Ashanti that from the beginning, I'm going to be a hands-off parent, baby girl, you circling the block to have a child with him, knowing that he told you he's going to be hands-off, baby girl, this ain't it. Then that becomes a selfish move. Reason being, the child requires a father's input, and him being a superstar is no different to anybody else has a father who's a worker 9 to 5. The child needs a parent. So in that instance, that's where Ashanti, maybe her needs and wants of having a child also threw her in a particular place, because if he told you from the beginning that he's gonna be hands off, you got to be accountable. You got to be accountable, because you're gonna complain and want that help. But if he told you beforehand, why did you want to go forward with it? What's going through your head, Ashanti, that you decided to go ahead of it? You know what I mean? Like, what's going through your mind? Are you thinking, that maybe he will change? Because it feels like it feels like at certain moments, for instance, them wanting to move to either St. Louis or New York, there's a conversation that they keep having about whether they're going to move or not. And that, that particular aspect, right, as well. I mean, they said it was planned. To be honest, Ashanti and Nelly said it's not an oops, baby. They planned this. Okay. All right. They said it in episode 1. He said, we plan to have this child. And they told the director, do not say it's an oops, baby. We meant to have this child. So they said it that way. Okay. So my thing here again, I think, again, I think obviously with a situation, she's going to have to also work on her anxiety. Her anxiety is going to make her sick, and it's going to strangle her. There was a part in the show here where they were talking, and I said, because what's going to happen is, and Nelly's on the road a lot. So the moment Nelly even stops being on the road, he's going to be back on the road again. Okay? He's going to be back on the road again. And I'll tell you why. The anxiety that seemingly Ashanti has will trigger his avoidancy. Okay? All right? So for me personally, I want to, this place clear. Yeah.
I don't want to say pursue my career, but get back to what I've been building for so long. Oh, God.
You good?
I hate failing like this. I know. But okay, I just have to make a decision.
So as they were having this conversation, she was talking about how anxious she is, and and yeah, how anxious she is and everything as well, right? And one thing you have to understand as well about having two attachment styles is that with the anxiety versus an avoidant perspective is that the anxious person always is afraid of being abandoned. In fact, it's interesting because she actually asked him, she wanted him to go to the show with her, and he said, nah, he ain't going. I don't think he was being rude or anything. He just said, I've got a show to do as well, right? But the anxiety, the fear of being abandoned will move you to a place where you may cling on to situations more. So I don't know. As I was hearing Nelly, I was like, when will he stop performing so much? I'm not saying quit, because look, when a man quits a job and quits what he's doing, he becomes miserable. We do not want a man to quit his job. There is no such thing. He should keep doing what he's doing. But maybe we can trim it down. And I said, I wonder if Nelly been on the road almost how many days on the road, part of it is because he's running away from Ashanti. Not because he doesn't like her. I want to make it very clear. Not because he doesn't like her, but rather because it helps to keep the elasticity in their relationship, because it helps him at a place where he consistently can keep missing her because they keep having distance. So some of it is actually really good, but then some of it is also because it keeps an emotional distance. So when he comes back, he can be this wonderful, enigmatic husband, but he goes on the road again and it's like, whew, thank God. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that in a rude way, just a perspective. But how long will that last for? Because now they're really together. How long will that last for? How long before this actually really gets becoming a problem? It may not be. I'm just pointing something out. Yes, okay, so here's this. If you look at this, okay, so this is what he pointed out as well.
Again, I can't beat him. I'm off. Not being there sometimes when they do certain things for the first time. I went through those things with all of my children, and sometimes those things get sacrificed. But you know that you're
okay. So unfortunately, like you said, he had to go through. He had to go through all those things with his children, right? He wasn't able to be there, and so at some point, you're gonna have to recognize you can't miss out on those moments, bro. If this is not your third child, if you're now going to say, I'm gonna bring that child to me whenever they're walking and talking, you're gonna miss those key moments again. And actually, by keeping your distance, you are further actually reinforcing the fact that you're going to miss those certain moments again. So you can't solve that issue without actually going to actually changing the inputs to get different output. Okay. So I think in this instance it was again, I'm looking at Nelly and I'm going, there's a lot of avoidant issues in this space as well. In that way. I think also for us, for Nelly as well going forward, when he feels like he's being practical, when he feels like he's being logical in a space, I think he fears emotional connection, and that comes with a child. When you are a parent and you have to look after someone, there's an emotional connection you have to develop and a bond. Okay, there is what we call shared emotional labor, and that means more than just you paying for the bills or being there once in a while. It is actually the toil. Look, as a firstborn, I didn't have to wake up every day. Let me be honest with you. I'm not gonna big up myself like that, but I do remember some days of waking up, bro. Okay, for the siblings. Yeah, I do remember getting up at some times, not always, just a few times, getting up in the middle of the night when I got to go to school the next day, getting up, getting a bottle, having to distill the bottle, you know what I mean? Kettle water, put some Weetabix, crush some Weetabix or crush some SMA milk, whatever, into a bottle, shake it, you know what I'm saying, to let it cool down, put it on your hand, dab it on your hand first, make sure, is it too hot? Make it a taste first. When sometimes touching your mouth, make sure, before you can even feed the baby. I remember some of those days of getting up in the middle of the night. Bro, it is nothing to play with, bro. And if one person is doing it, now, of course, they've got money for nannies, but it's not about the nanny. It's about the emotional labor. See, the connectivity of being involved in that, it's like getting your hands dirty. It's something different. It is it's something important, and you don't realize until you're in it. Like again, because I'm a firstborn, so having to have the baby, and having to pat the back of the baby on your shoulder, holding it there after they've eaten, burping, sometimes the food coming on your face, them regurgitating the food on your face or whatever. These are key moments, bro. Like I remember all the times with my siblings when they went from no movement to crawling, from crawling to walking, their first walk. Bro, I can't, who is it? I think it's the first of the sisters said my name first. I was so excited. I said, damn right, you better say my name first, because I've been there. Probably that's why I mean my sister have a special bond as well. But, so I remember the first word that was coming out of their mouth was, coach. And I couldn't be excited more than that. You know what I'm saying to you? So when I say I've seen things, and I know that the emotional connection it builds, right? The emotional connection it builds with that, having to look after a child in some particular aspect and having to be responsive to those moments, it changes you. You cannot not be changed. So when you rob yourself of that opportunity, you are actually in that space. You're actually in that space, actually robbing yourself of not just experience, not just time, but you're robbing yourself of an emotional bond that will actually affect the child later on. You know what I mean? That child deals that later on. So it's all well and good, because right now he's on the road, he's with his son. His son is at an age where he wants to achieve things. So it looks great now, but how does that affect him emotionally? I've said it before. So I'm gonna pretty much leave it there. I think I don't need to go any further. I don't want the live to go too long. But I just, for any man or woman out there, listen, struggling, especially for the men as well, I understand how hard it can be to want to be present and always a part of the situation. I do get it, because again, I understand as a man how, you're thinking about trying to protect, provide, and all those things, and it can be very difficult at that time. The only way to solve the issue is actually to lean in. That's the only way. The only way actually to solve the issue is to lean in. You do it for a week or two, and you're going to recognize how things are, how you're going to actually appreciate your partner in a much different way, number one. And number two, you'll really be able to have a different relationship with your children in that space. I remember, I'm just telling you, I can remember changing nappies. I can remember doing potty training. I can remember doing discipline. I can remember teaching them words. I can remember watching them, sitting and then almost wanting to fall back, and you have to always be attentive because they're going to try and fall back. I remember moments of them doing their first climb. You turn around, they're trying to climb the sofa, you'll climb some stairs. Like I remember, them trying to figure out, what they can put in their mouth and what they shouldn't be putting in their mouth. Like these are all key component moments. Like it may seem trivial and it may seem like, oh, it's a lot, but you don't realize, again, this actually creates a bond for you as a parent so that you can love that child in the way they need to be loved, not just because of what they do. You know what I mean? Oh, now my son's old enough or my daughter's old enough to do what they want to do. I'll support them in what they want to do. But you missed an emotional aspect. It's really important. So yeah, hopefully episode 3 will go a little bit deeper into that as well. But I do feel like Nelly just needs to lean in a bit more, and go a little bit deeper so that he can understand how best he can support Ashanti as well. By actually putting yourself in that work, it will change a lot of things. For anybody out there, if you're here, if you do need some coaching around attachment issues, please do book a session with me. Book a free discovery call, 30 minutes long, and let's discuss whether your needs and expectations can meet with our coaching as well. I want to be able to help people as well going forward. So if you're somebody who suffers with attachment issues, maybe you're an avoidant, and you've seen maybe yourself in this Nelly situation, you can be a little bit distant, you can be a little bit reserved, then please, by all means, reach out to me. We'll definitely chop it up with you and hopefully be able to help grow you to a more secure place so you can have much more better relationships as well. Okay, much love, much appreciation. We have got a live on Love Island in a few minutes. I appreciate y'all. Stay locked, stay loaded. We'll see you again soon.